Hey everyone, and welcome to our explainer. Especially if you're a Class 10 student, this is going to get you totally exam ready. We're about to take a deep dive into the 19th century, a time that wasn't just about steam engines and new factories. It was about these hidden, powerful forces that connected our world and conquered it in ways you'd never expect.
So let's jump right in with a pretty shocking idea. When you think about conquering a country, you're probably picturing armies, right? Soldiers, cannons, the whole deal. But what if the most powerful weapon of empire in the 19th century wasn't a weapon at all? What if it was invisible? Yep, a virus. Today, we're going to uncover how this and a few other surprising forces really shaped the global world we live in.
Okay, so here's what we're diving into today. We're going to explore 3 huge case studies that show you let's say, the darker side of globalization. We'll look at a killer cattle plague in Africa, a whole new system of slavery that impacted Indians, and a massive shift in how global trade worked. And you'll definitely want to stick around to the end, because we're going to wrap it all up with a super fast recap to nail down those key points for your exam.
Right, so the textbooks love to talk about all the amazing growth in the 19th century. More trade, more technology, the world getting closer. But we have to ask a really important question. Growth for who? The truth is, for millions of people, this brand new interconnected world meant losing everything. Their freedom, their land, their way of life, all to build European empires. All right, our first stop is a really chilling story about what happens when biology and empire mix. We're heading to Africa, where a single disease did more for European colonizers than any army ever could have. Let's get our first key term loaded up. Rinderpest. Now, this wasn't some disease that was native to Africa. Nope. This was an incredibly infectious cattle plague that showed up in the late 1880s. And how did it get there? It was brought in with infected cattle imported all the way from British Asia to feed Italian soldiers trying to colonize parts of the continent. And once it arrived, it spread with terrifying speed. I mean, look at this timeline. It spread like wildfire. It started in the east, and just 5 years later, it had crossed the entire continent to the Atlantic. By 1897, it had swallowed up Africa all the way down to the southernmost tip. And the impact? It was catastrophic. We're talking 90%. That's how many cattle were wiped out. Now, for people whose entire livelihood, wealth, and way of life depended on their livestock, this was a total economic and social collapse. Everything was just gone. Okay, this is the chain of events you absolutely have to understand for your exam. Step 1. Rinderpest destroys the very foundation of African wealth. See, before this, most Africans had land and cattle, so they had absolutely no reason to go work for a wage for some European colonizer. But then, step 2, the plague hits, and suddenly they're left with nothing. This was the opening the colonizers were waiting for. They took control of whatever land and cattle were left, essentially forcing Africans to work on their plantations and in their mines just to feed their families. The virus literally paved the way for conquest. So we just saw how a virus could trap people. Now let's look at a system designed to move people. Our next case study is all about the mass migration of Indian laborers who were forced into a contract system so brutal that historians have called it a new kind of slavery. This system was called indentured labor. Now, on paper, it sounded kind of straightforward. You sign a contract to work for 5 years in a far-off land, and in return, your passage is paid for. But in reality, it was a trap. It was a viciously exploitative system that took advantage of hundreds of thousands of Indians, mostly from poor areas where they had very few other options. And their labor literally built the colonial world. They were shipped all across the planet, digging in mines, cutting sugarcane on plantations, and building railways. I mean, look at this list. They were sent to the Caribbean, Mauritius, Fiji, and even closer to home, to work on tea plantations in places like Ceylon and Assam, or rubber plantations in Malaya. So you might be asking, why would anyone sign up for this? Well, the short answer is deception. The recruitment agents who were paid by commission would paint this picture of paradise. They lied about the work, lied about the pay, lied about where they were even going. They'd hide just how long and dangerous the journey was. And in the worst cases, if someone wasn't willing, they were just kidnapped. And nothing tells the story better than the words of the people who lived it. This quote from a laborer, Ramnarayan Tiwari, is just heartbreaking. He says his hands got so bruised he couldn't work, and for that, he was thrown in jail. There were no real legal rights. This system wasn't about giving people a better life. It was about squeezing every last bit of labor out of them, no matter the human cost.
All right, for our last case study, let's do what they always say, follow the money. We've talked about the movement of disease and people. Now let's talk about the movement of goods and how India's massive economy got totally flipped on its head to fuel Britain's growing empire.
This slide tells the whole story. It's a tale of two Indias, really. On the left, you've got the before. India was a global manufacturing powerhouse, famous for exporting beautiful, high-quality cotton cloth to Europe. But on the right, you see the after. Britain's new factories wanted to sell their cloth, so they pushed policies that basically broke down India's textile industry and flipped its role completely. India was forced to become a supplier of raw materials for British factories and a captive market for finished British goods.
And this is what that looks like in hard numbers. Britain started selling a huge amount of its expensive finished goods to India, while only buying a much smaller value of cheap raw materials from India. This created what's known as a trade surplus for Britain. Basically, a whole lot more money was flowing out of India and into Britain than the other way around. It was pure profit. Okay, now this is the really clever and kind of ruthless part of the whole strategy. What did Britain do with all that profit it was making from India? Well, Britain was buying tons of stuff from other places, like tea from China. And that meant Britain owed China money. It had a trade deficit. So what did they do? They simply used the profits, the surplus they were squeezing out of India, to pay off their debts to other countries. India became the financial engine that bankrolled Britain's entire global operation. But, and this is super important, it's not like Indians were just victims in this story. Far from it. Even inside this colonial system, you had these incredible Indian entrepreneurs, bankers, and traders who were building their own financial networks. They financed farming all across Asia and created their own complex systems for moving money across huge distances. It's a powerful reminder that Indian capital and cleverness were still a huge force on the world stage. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground. Let's pull all of this together and lock it in. It's time for your exam quick recap. These are the key takeaways you absolutely need to know. Let's lock in these three pillars. Number 1, Rinderpest, a disease that was turned into a weapon to destroy African self-sufficiency and make colonization possible. Number 2, indentured labor, that so-called new system of slavery that shipped millions of Indians around the world to power the colonial machine. And number 3, India's trade shift, the total transformation of India from a manufacturing giant into the financial battery pack for the entire British Empire. These three stories show you the real, complex, and often brutal truth of 19th century globalization. And there you have it, a deep dive into the hidden forces that truly made our global world. It just goes to show you that history is way more than just dates and famous names. It's about these deep, powerful connections between disease, people, and money. To get the full picture, make sure you watch our other explainers that cover the rest of this chapter. If this helped you get more exam ready, please hit that like button, share, comment, and definitely subscribe to the A1 Institute YouTube channel. For admissions, notes, and guidance, you can contact A1 Institute. The phone number is right there in the description. Thanks so much for watching.